We spend most of our lives believing that saying yes makes us strong, that being accessible, responsive, and always present is the mark of kindness, competence, and love. But psychology tells a different story. Constant availability is the slowest form of self-erasure. When you are always reachable, you are no longer seen, you are used. The mind, both yours and others, begins to normalize your presence until it no longer holds value. What was once appreciated becomes expected. What was once a gift becomes a given. The human brain is wired for adaptation, and that includes emotional adaptation. When something is constant, it fades into the background of perception. This is why when you stop being constantly available, the world doesn't end, it reorganizes itself around you. In cognitive psychology, there's a concept called attentional bias. We assign higher value to what is scarce and uncertain. The more predictable something is, the less it commands our attention. That's why people chase what they might lose, not what they already have. When you step back, you trigger that bias. Your absence creates a vacuum, and nature, including human nature, hates a vacuum. It's not cruelty. It's calibration. Psychologically, unavailability isn't about neglect, it's about energy management. When you withhold your attention, you teach your environment how to treat your presence. You stop being the background and become the focal point again. You reset emotional equilibrium. This isn't manipulation, it's awareness. You are no longer running on other people's urgency, you are teaching them to respect your rhythm. Think of it this way. When you stop answering every call, people start calling with intention. When you stop giving your time away freely, people start earning it. The mind learns through contrast. Presence is meaningful only in the shadow of absence. Availability without boundaries leads to resentment. Resentment leads to burnout. And burnout turns into a quiet kind of self-contempt, the feeling that you have nothing left to offer because you've given it all away. This is not selflessness, it's self-destruction disguised as generosity. To stop being constantly available is not to become cold, it's to become conscious. It's the act of reclaiming selective presence, being there when it aligns with your purpose, not merely when it's demanded. The moment you withdraw, even slightly, a shift occurs. People start to notice your silence. They replay your words. They sense the boundary where once there was none. And that is when something powerful happens. You stop chasing validation, and validation starts chasing you. Because the truth is this: when you are everywhere, you are nowhere. But when you choose where to stand, everything begins to orbit around you. When you stop being available, the world doesn't simply notice, it rebalances. Every relationship, every habit, every unspoken contract you built on constant presence begins to renegotiate itself. People don't respond to your words, they respond to your patterns. And when your pattern of availability changes, it sends a psychological shockwave through the systems that once depended on you. The brain is predictive by nature. It craves consistency. When you've always been the one who answers, shows up, replies, or rescues, you've built a neural expectation in others, a loop of cause and effect. But when that loop breaks, the mind panics. This is where your evolution begins. In behavioral psychology, this is called extinction burst. When a conditioned behavior suddenly stops receiving its usual reward, the response first intensifies before it fades. This is why, when you first set boundaries, people push harder. They call more, question more, guilt more. They are not fighting you, they're fighting the loss of access. But if you hold your ground, that resistance collapses. And then something remarkable happens. Your value stabilizes at a higher level of respect. Because scarcity always magnifies worth. What people can no longer consume freely, they start to protect. The same applies to your time, your energy, your mind. When you stop being available to everything, you start being meaningful to something. Your yes begins to matter again. This isn't manipulation, it's psychological homeostasis. Systems, including human systems, naturally reorganize around boundaries. You don't have to fight anyone for respect. You only need to withdraw from where it's not reciprocated. The absence of your availability becomes its own form of communication, cleaner, stronger, and far more instructive than argument or persuasion. And internally, something deeper unfolds. When you stop scattering your attention outward, you start reclaiming it inward. Your nervous system calms, your focus sharpens, you rediscover how much energy was lost in reaction. Because availability isn't just physical, it's cognitive exposure. Every notification, every favor, every unfiltered access to your mental space drains psychological resources. When you limit that exposure, your consciousness begins to expand again. The less noise you entertain, the more clearly you hear your own intuition. You begin to realize how much of your identity was built on external feedback and how little of it was truly yours. By becoming less available to others, you become more available to yourself. And this is where the power dynamic fully reverses. Before, you moved around other people's needs. Now, others move around your presence. Before, you were a responder. Now, you are the reference point. The shift is invisible but absolute. It's the transition from external validation to internal sovereignty. Machiavelli understood this principle long before modern psychology gave it language. He wrote that a ruler must not be too easily approached, nor too easily pleased. Accessibility dilutes authority. The one who is everywhere loses gravity. The one who is selective commands attention without even asking for it. This is not about ego, it's about control. Control over your energy, your availability, and ultimately, your influence. You can't lead what you constantly chase. You can't be respected in spaces where you have no restraint. To stop being perpetually available is not isolation, it's evolution. It's the point where emotion meets discipline, where empathy meets structure. You learn to give from abundance, not obligation. You start realizing that connection without boundaries is not love, it's leakage. Every time you pause before responding, you reclaim a fragment of your power. Every time you say no without explanation, you reinforce psychological authority. And slowly, the world mirrors back a different version of you, one that doesn't beg to be understood, but demands to be respected through silence and precision. And here's the deeper paradox. When you stop being available, you don't lose connection, you attract alignment. The noise fades, the chaos quiets, and what remains are people and opportunities that operate on your frequency. True influence doesn't announce itself. It withdraws, it watches, it waits until its presence is requested, and only then does it move. That is not arrogance, that is mastery. So, understand this: when you step back, when you stop giving every part of yourself away, you are not diminishing your humanity. You are refining your value. You are teaching the world the cost of your energy. And when that lesson is learned, the world adjusts. It bends to your tempo. It values your silence as much as it once valued your voice. Because in the psychology of power, the one who controls his attention controls perception, and the one who controls perception controls everything.